So, of course, I do want to start with the land acknowledgement here in Canada as we gather in the different parts of our country today and across the ocean. We acknowledge that we are on the traditional lands of our First Nations and Inuit peoples, both unceded and treaty territories. We also acknowledge that we are on the homeland of the Métis, and we pay our respect to the First Nations, Inuit and Métis ancestors of Canada, and reaffirm our relationship with one another. Now, I myself here in Saskatchewan am on Treaty 6, the traditional territories of the Cree, Dene, Nakota, Saulteaux, and Ojibwe people, and the homeland of the Métis Nation. Just a look at our agenda for today, a brief look at the two organizations that are bringing this to you today, and then we're going to look at a couple of museum resources, lesson plans, survivor accounts, and some of the other resources that I want to bring your attention to. So first of all, who we are. Of course, my name is Larry Michalczyk, and I have spent 30 years teaching high school and 2 years as a curriculum coach with the Horizon School Division in Saskatchewan before taking on my current role with Voices into Action. Now, I have been with the Holodomor Awareness and Education Committee as an honorary Ukrainian for the past 6 years. And today I am representing both of these organizations, the UCC's Saskatchewan Holodomor Committee, Awareness and Education Committee, as well as our nonprofit organization, where we provide free lessons to teachers through Voices into Action and the Choose Your Voice programs. So just a brief bit here about UCC Sask. So as a member of the UCC Sask Holodomor Awareness and Education Committee, our main responsibilities are to promote both education and commemoration during the year with a specific focus on the Memorial Week in November. Now, I have a screenshot here on the right of our homepage and you can go to the About way up here on the About, if you can see my cursor. And from there, there's a link to information on the Holodomor. And at the bottom of that page are a series of linked resources. And I've shown those here on the table. You can see the table that I've grabbed a screenshot of. So if you want to access that page, feel free to use the round QR code that I've provided on the page with your cell phone camera. So here on the left, I've used a QR code, created a QR code for you. That one will link you to our UCC Sask page. I'll just give you a couple of seconds if you are in fact doing that. And from here, I'm going to just move on to introduce the other organization I work for, the nonprofit organization that provides free human rights and social justice lessons for teachers of middle years and high school. Our Choose Your Voice platform, which you can see on the right over here, I've grabbed a screenshot of our homepage, supports teachers of middle years, while the Voices into Action program provides 33 free lessons for teachers at the high school level. And here I've created a QR code for you to link you to the Voices into Action homepage, where you can register to unlock all of the features that we provide to you for free. One of the lessons I'm going to look at today is from the Voices into Action package. It is one of our 33 lessons that focuses on one of the genocides that is recognized here in Canada. So today we're introducing you to two museums that have resources to help you teach about the Holodomor. The museum in the Ukraine and the Canadian Museum for Human Rights here in Canada are two of those museums. So first, a quick look at what is available at the museum in Ukraine. We will have a look at their website, where much is available in English. And if your school has a program in Ukrainian, of course, then this website would be of great benefit to you. So here I have linked, or will be linking live to their website. So I am currently live on their website, just scrolling for you to have a quick look. I've already clicked on the English as my language of choice. And you can see there are up here at the top, segment 4 links to some information about the museum itself, museum activities. You can see education projects listed there, other relevant information, more or less the news that they make available on their website. Here's probably mainly what you would be looking for is a little bit about Holodomor history, which is, I'll click on that, which is available in English. So it does come up in English. Not everything is available in English on the website, particularly the resources that they have linked, the all additional resources. Theme of the Holodomor in art, if you teach art within your curricula or within your school, there are some ideas that you may gain here from these 2 pages on art in the classroom, or Holodomor art, rather, for you to use within your classroom. So that's a live look at their website, a quick look. I'm just going to move on to the next slide. So here, I'm just going to go to the beginning. Available on the Holodomor Museum website is this short video. I'll play the entire video for you. It's only 42 seconds long, but it gives you a quick look at their museum. Now, just before doing so, I am going to optimize for video clip, and we'll just have a listen to this.
Welcome to the National Museum of the Holodomor Genocide. The museum was established in 2009 to pay tribute to millions of Ukrainians killed by the man-made famine of 1932 and 1933. This crime got the name of the Holodomor, which in Ukrainian means mass murder by starvation. It was recognized as genocide of the Ukrainian people. Each item in the exhibition tells its own story related to the Holodomor. We will be glad to see you in our museum.
Okay, so just a very quick overview of the museum itself. And I'm just moving to the next page where we will have a quick look at the virtual tour that you can take through the museum. So this slide links us to the 3D tour of the museum in Kyiv and other resources available on the website. So I'm just going to go to that. If I tried expanding to the full page, I lose this site with the embedded web page. So I'm just going to show it to you this way here. But as with any 3D tour, you can grab the side of the page and look up or down, clicking on various artifacts. Unfortunately, all this is unfortunate to me, it's only available in Ukrainian, so I am unable to read that. Those of you who teach in a school that offers Ukrainian, this would be a benefit to you. Although I do notice, is it on this wall? No, I guess I've gone still a bit too far. For example, this document here is translated into English. So there are some things that you can see in English as you look through the museum, but you can have a look at this at artifacts within the museum. But the written information is a bit of a challenge for us, for those of us that are non-Ukrainian speakers. Now this here you'll see has a video available. Now you do have to go to YouTube, but of course it's linked here for you to access that. And I think this, I don't know if this goes into another gallery. Oh, this is the exit actually of the museum. As you go through the museum, you'll come out at that exit. That gives you a little bit of an idea of the virtual tour here at the National Museum in Kyiv. Be a very interesting museum to go to in person, and of course here video that people who visit there in person can go and see. And this on the right hand side of your screen is giving you the 3D look at the statue that has been reproduced here in Saskatchewan near the legislature. Anyway, from here I'm going to move forward onto our Canadian Museum for Human Rights in Winnipeg, Manitoba. And it has a series of galleries focusing on the genocides recognized by the Canadian government. And the Holodomor is one of those galleries and featured on their website. I was not able to secure a video recording of that gallery. But what I have done here is I'll take you to their website where they do have this one segment that entitled Covering the Holodomor, Memory Eternal. And misinformation and deception play a crucial role in mass atrocities such as the Holodomor. We've got the article here, a short article, a video clip, and I will play this video in its entirety for you to see. And then there are 3 follow-up questions that we'll have a quick look at after we look at this video. They've prepared a 13-minute film entitled Covering the Holodomor Memory Eternal, of course, which I've already stated. It's a film exploring the Holodomor through the lens of media reporting, and it looks at the role and responsibility of reporters confronted with human rights violations. So I'm just going to start that here. Do I still have it on optimize? Yes, I do.
In 1932, a small but steady stream of articles began appearing in the Canadian press and elsewhere about a famine in Ukraine, then part of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics. Worldwide, supporters of the regime and its ideals wished to portray a workers' paradise evolving there and dismiss the reports as anti-communist propaganda. A few journalists, travelers, and diplomats claim that the famine was actually caused by the Soviet government itself for political reasons. Soon after, in 1933, the Great Hunger reached its terrible climax. The fact that mass hunger had occurred in Ukraine was not in dispute. What was at issue was the scope of the tragedy and its cause. Millions died of starvation, caused not by drought or massive crop failure, but as a deliberate policy of the Soviet government. A program of destruction targeting the people of Ukraine and the Ukrainian nation under the direct orders of Joseph Stalin, leader of the Soviet Communist Party. The contradictory accounts of the disaster quickly faded from world news to be replaced by other stories. Half a century passed in virtual silence. Beginning in the 1980s, worldwide Ukrainian immigrants and their children started to revive the truth. They would piece together a story of genocide, engineered for political purposes, of mass violations of the most fundamental of human rights, and of the unexpected role of journalistic responsibility. A law passed by the Ukrainian government in 2006 recognized this famine as a genocide deliberately perpetrated by Soviet Russia. In 2008, the Canadian government followed with its own recognition of the genocide. It has come to be known as the Holodomor. How could the story of the Holodomor have been kept quiet from the world for so long? In the Soviet Union of the 1930s, the true nature of the famine was known to many, but it was obscured in a tangle of disinformation, denial, and threats. Journalists had their press credentials, their access, even their visas canceled for any publication that contradicted the Soviet regime. In the West, the perception of the famine was partly shaped by the influential voice of the New York Times, specifically by the newspaper's special correspondent in the Soviet Union, award-winning reporter Walter Duranty. While millions died of starvation, Duranty, a Soviet sympathizer, sent home dispatches trivializing the extent and cause of the famine, asserting that, while there might have been some fatalities, most were due to illness brought on by malnutrition. In private, Duranty would openly admit that millions in Ukraine were dying of hunger. But in his articles, he distorted the truth. He even went as far as placing some of the blame on Ukrainians themselves, claiming a stubborn resistance to the Soviet government's plans for improving farming efficiency. He wrote what the Soviets wanted, a story of the successful nationalization of agriculture. Beginning in 1928, private farms were confiscated and then planted and harvested collectively. Ownership, control, and distribution of agriculture were now entirely in the hands of the state. However, fierce resistance to these policies came from Ukrainians who desired independence from Soviet control. Small landowners were defiant and were seen as a threat to Soviet dominance. Stalin would remove this threat. He would eliminate them. Each agricultural collective was assigned a quota, an amount of grain which had to be handed over to the government before members of a collective could keep any for themselves. Quotas were set high, almost impossible to meet. Failure to comply, or a history of resistance in a given region, meant a combination of penalties and punishments that would inevitably work to starve the offenders. To ensure full compliance, Stalin replaced local leaders with officials obedient to the Soviet regime. Soviet police raided homes for food to make up for any shortfall. Holding on to even a few grains for oneself could mean a decade in prison or execution on the spot. Starved corpses littered the countryside.
У нас казали гарба, такий віз глибокий. То як ті мертві були, то вони вилами такими підбирали і кидали. То як вже чули, що їде та гарба, то тікали, хто ще сили мав, то ліз десь під корче, під дерево чи щось. Бо якщо вони скажуть, забирай, ми не будемо за ним другий раз вертатися.
In the midst of the conspiracy of silence and denial surrounding the growing famine, multiple voices attempted to get the truth out. Among them, two journalists from the United Kingdom, Malcolm Muggeridge and Gareth Jones, decided independently to investigate the stricken area in the fall of 1932 and the winter of 1933. They encountered starving peasants lining up along the railway, hoping to be thrown a crust of bread.
The novelty of this particular famine, and it is the basic point about it, is that, I mean, what made it so diabolical is that it was not a result of some catastrophe, like a drought or something of that sort, or even an epidemic. It was the deliberate creation of a bureaucratic mind which demanded the collectivization of agriculture immediately as a purely theoretical proposition without any consideration whatever of what would be the consequences in human suffering.
The borders of Ukraine had been closed. No food was allowed to be imported into targeted areas. Travel beyond one's own district to find food was forbidden. Those outside of the affected regions who tried to bring food to family members had it confiscated at the border. And since the state prevented all access, no aid or relief organizations could get in to help alleviate the suffering. Columnist Malcolm Muggeridge knew that once his articles came out, he would be finished as a reporter in the Soviet Union and planned to leave the country before they were published. In order to avoid censorship by the Soviet state, he arranged to have his dispatches to the Guardian newspaper sent home in British diplomatic bags. But, according to Muggeridge, the Guardian dramatically edited his stories to make them conform with the official Soviet narrative. When Gareth Jones managed to get articles about the famine published, the backlash was furious. His work contradicted correspondent Walter Duranty, the authoritative New York Times, and the Soviet government. Jones wrote, "I walked along through villages and 12 collective farms. Everywhere was the cry, 'There is no bread. We are dying.'" Duranty and others, perhaps with Soviet encouragement, branded Jones a liar. His credibility in ruins, Jones, along with Muggeridge, was slandered by his peers and kept from practicing journalism in his homeland. The full story of the Holodomor remained in obscurity for half a century. The Soviet government continued its campaign of covering up, denying, and minimizing the genocide for 50 years, right up until the USSR itself began to crumble in the 1980s. Ultimately, millions of people had been subjected to slow death, while much of the world press looked the other way or collaborated in spreading lies. Despite their courage, Muggeridge, Jones, and a few others could not stop the Holodomor, nor prevent the decades-long secrecy surrounding it. Journalists have the power to reveal or to conceal. The enormous responsibility to draw attention to crimes against humanity as they take place in authoritarian and closed societies carries enormous risk. What is the role and what are the obligations of media in shaping public opinion about gross violations of human rights? As social media expands and technology becomes increasingly accessible, what is the effect and reliability of new sources of information coming directly from the hands of citizens? What can we do as individuals, as communities, as nations to ensure that genocides like the Holodomor never happen again?
Okay, as you can see, some very important questions asked at the end of that. And on the, click, there we go. On the Canadian Museum for Human Rights website, they follow up the video with these 3 questions for us to use with our students. And of course, we've become very familiar with the term fake news, but the concept of fake news is nothing new. We have seen the public misled throughout history, through government releases, through the media. It is important that our students, gain a full understanding of the importance of consulting diverse sources of information and knowing how to determine the veracity of the sources that they examine. It is also important for our students to discuss why careful examination of the past and past atrocities is critical to how we respond to events going on around us in the world today. So three great questions to explore with your students. Okay, moving forward, I want to introduce you to the lesson that we have in our Voices into Action, Unit 2, Genocide Chapter 5, which focuses on, as you can see by my screen grab here, the Holodomor. So it's a lesson that was developed by the UCC Saskatchewan Holodomor Awareness and Education Committee group for use with our Voices into Action. So it was developed here in Saskatchewan, and we're very proud to have that as one of our key units, looking at genocide in the Voices into Action unit. Now, it is available in both English and French, but there's also a download available in Ukrainian. So feel free again to use your phone to use this QR code if you want to take and link directly to that lesson. We will have a quick look at the online format of the lesson so that you can see it online. Of course, One of our educator tools is the ability to access and print off the teaching plan for each lesson, which provides key themes, course connections, the learning goals, and a summary of the chapter content, as well as the actions or activities for the lesson. Here you can see the learning goals for the Holodomor lesson. All the lessons in our Voices into Action website start with 2 or 3 questions. Here we have 3 ask yourself questions that are meant to initiate student thinking. They act as your motivational set. And here are the 3 that introduce the lesson on the Holodomor. So here on our website, okay, so now I'm live on the website. There are the 3 questions. We've got a very brief summary of what the lesson is about, in this case, the Holodomor. And here's one of the original videos that we have in each of our lessons. Some have more than one. Here we have one video. Now, we will have a look at a couple minutes of this video a little bit later on. You can see here's the link to the Holodomor chapter in Ukrainian, plus another link to Holodomor survivors and the video recordings of their testimonies. Of course, the lesson has a glossary for you to use, the information about the Holodomor itself to use with your students, and the historical context, timeline of the background to the Holodomor, also the Holodomor itself, some of the events there are summarized in this timeline, and then moving forward. As we continue to move forward, I'm just going to grab this here and click forward a bit. We have also provided a series of artifacts, which are primary documents or sources of data for you to use. And then following these are the activities that you can use with your students. They're ready to go. You can select which ones you want to use. If you want to use 1, 3, and 7, or if you want to use all of them. And they link, as you can see by the highlight here, to the artifacts that were listed just prior to this part of the lesson. So that takes us to the end of the lesson. Here's the credit given to UCC Sask for developing that lesson. So I'm just going to move ahead here. So these are the basic structure: thought-provoking questions, the video from Valentina Kirliu, glossary, history and timeline, and the artifacts and primary documents that then contribute to the lessons themselves. So we have eight actions or activities in this particular lesson that teachers can choose from to use with your students. Most of them use the artifacts and documents that are provided for you in that lesson. So here is the video. We won't watch the entire 10-minute video in the interest of time, but I thought we'll play the first 2 minutes or so of this video. So Valentina's father survived, and I believe some of her aunts and uncles survived.
Holodomor is a word that comes
I'll just optimize for the video clip here. I apologize for that. So
from 2 Ukrainian words. One is holod means starvation or famine, and the second one, morete, means to torturously put to death. The definition is death inflicted by starvation, and it's a man-made famine. Created by the Soviet Union, the Ukrainian genocide, known as the Holodomor, started in 1928, and it came to a crisis in 1932-33. It was about 4 million men, women, and children died because of starvation, because of man-made famine, the Holodomor. Stalin, he was a dictator who came to power, and he decided that he was going to make the Soviet Union into a very important state, and he wanted to build a very strong army because he was interested in spreading communism around the world. The Ukraine was conquered by the Soviet Red Army, and the Ukrainians who had tried to set up their own country for a while were now under what we call the Soviet Empire. The Soviet Union tried to control the Ukrainian population, which was not keen on communism. They also felt that they had to take over this land and the property of all these farmers. Now, it's not buying them out. It's a question of taking it. They had to take the grain away from the Ukrainian people and to ship it out overseas. They even took the seed grain, which is used for planting the new crop for the following year. They took away all the grain and all the reserves, so there was nothing to make bread out of. They took away all food, pumpkins, apples, anything that was edible. The family lived just on the outskirts of the city of Kyiv, which is the capital city of Ukraine. They were prominent farmers. My grandfather was arrested in 1929, at the beginning of 1929, as a kulak. A kulak is a rich peasant, as they call them. Stalin's policy at the very beginning was to arrest these farmers. They sent in a group of people from the secret police, which was called the GPU. They took him to prison. They just came and just took him forcibly, and he was put into the gulag. He died in 1937 in prison. My grandmother, who was still living in the house, the family home in the village, a group of people, again, from the GPU and maybe some locals, came in, and they threw her out of the house with just what she had on, 20 below, in January, and with her 5 children, because my father was not there at that time. They threw them out on the street. And they warned anybody who would help them that they would get the same kind of treatment. So some neighbor in the area did allow them to live in her barn for the winter. A little bit of everything they owned, the implements, the machinery, the livestock, their household items, their clothing, everything was going to be auctioned and given away. So they were just thrown out. They were garbage, basically, the scum of the earth. It was being done on a massive scale. There were about 1.5 million people, men, women, and children, who were affected. Most of them ended up in Siberia. Some were executed, and some went to the gulag.
I'm just going to pause the video at that point. So this is the video that accompanies the lesson from Voices into Action, which is freely available to all teachers. The one thing I did not point out, and I guess I should have pointed out, there's also, we provide a companion student website, so you can send your students to the student website where all the information is available to them without the, and including the activities, including the documents and the artifacts, but without the teacher resources, the teacher rubric or the other sources to help you in preparing your lesson. So from here, I'm just going to move.
Holodomor is a word.
Click on there. Additional resources for you. There are many additional resources available to support your work in introducing the Holodomor or adding more depth to your lessons about the Holodomor. Here you can see I've taken a screen grab from the Holodomor mobile classroom site. This is centered out of Ontario, the mobile classroom, but it has made, I believe it's 3 tours to Saskatchewan and is tentatively scheduled to come back in the spring of 2020. So if you're interested in bringing this to your school or to your community in Saskatchewan, you can contact myself or contact the Holodomor Awareness and Education Committee. I'm not personally taking responsibility for the booking, but I can just move you on to our committee member that is taking on the role of booking the tour to schools and communities. I've seen it a couple of times in schools and communities. It's a very integrated, well-integrated lesson that takes place right in the mobile classroom, as I should say. So that's an option for you. Also, many Holodomor survivors gave interviews about their experiences, and they are linked here on this Canadian website. Actually, I've got it live here. Let me just go to the home page. That's the home page. We also have this website linked on our Voices into Action website. You saw that. I pointed out that link when we were on our website. So here you can share more testimony with your students. Now, most of the testimony is recorded in Ukrainian language. So if I just click on this one here, along the right-hand side is the English translation of what is said on the on the recording. But there are a few that are in English. So for example, Stefan here it's translated here into, not translated, it's recorded here in English as well, but he speaks in
That's why they did
English.
this process of collectivization. So if you did want to give anything to kolkhoz, they were taken by force. Everything was taken by force. And so they did with us, my family, my father. was arrested just because he was not supporter of this process of collectivization. And not only he was arrested, but also they took everything what we had, threw us out of the house, and took us, that's the other rayon, other region. She was baking the bread.
So a very valuable resource. I know I have used this resource in my own classroom back when I was still teaching school, and special presentations to schools or to classrooms. I've used, and you can see there are a number of pages of survivor testimony and a brief summary here of what is in that testimony under each name. So again, some very valuable resources there. Of course, you want to be a little cautious with the content if you're teaching younger students. Of course, I don't need to tell you about caution within your classroom. You know your students and you know your protocols within your division and jurisdiction. Additional resources. So here, this is a short video entitled Holodomor, Voices of Survivors. It's available on Vimeo rather. Here is the link. It's a very short link. I'm going to optimize again. I believe it's about a 9-minute video. We'll have a look at a bit of the beginning so you can get a feel for the flavor of this particular resource.
The Holodomor was a brutal act of genocide perpetrated by Soviet dictator Joseph Stalin against the Ukrainian nation and anyone who resisted the communist regime. Stalin sought to crush Ukrainian national sentiment by destroying the nation's political, cultural, and religious leadership. In 1932 and 33, he unleashed a famine against the Ukrainian countryside. Millions of men, women, and children died of starvation.
They were taking away the living, those men who carted away the corpses. They were barely able to walk themselves, and my mother protested, saying that they were taking people who were still alive. But they said, "We're not coming back to this village a second time to take them away."
The assault by famine on the Ukrainian peasant population was accompanied by a wide-ranging destruction of Ukrainian cultural and religious life and slaughter of the Ukrainian intelligentsia.
In keeping with communist doctrine, Stalin and the Communist Party set out to destroy all private property and nationalize all commerce and industry. In 1928, he instituted the first 5-year plan, which aimed at rapid industrialization and increased militarization of the Soviet Union at any cost. Ultimately, he sought total control over the Soviet population. He turned to the most exportable resource, Ukrainian grain, to finance this plan. Collectivization of the countryside was forcibly imposed. Villagers' property, including all livestock, crops, and food supplies, was expropriated by the Soviet state. Many thousands were forced out of their homes.
There were 10 of us, and only 2 of us survived. My father was sent to Siberia. They took all the livestock and told my father to drown it, but he said he'd rather sit in prison than drown the livestock. They took everything. In our house, they broke all the windows, all the doors. We had icons. They destroyed the icons and took all the linen, and we couldn't sleep in the house. We had to sleep outside.
On August 7th, 1932,
that gives you a bit of a flavor of this particular resource. As you can see, there are a number of resources available for you to use this week that are ready-made, ready to go. And I encourage you to pursue them or have a look at them. Oops, one more. There we go. Now, new evidence, though, is still being discovered and can be, as you can see here from this particular screen capture here that I've had, and you'll notice that it is a video. If you go to that website, then this is just a screen grab, so I don't have that video for you. But from September 22nd, 2021 is this newspaper article. where we find 69 new letters from a South African civil engineer who was working in the Ukraine during the Holodomor. And while he was working there, he wrote to his friends in England. I wrote these letters, and again, more testimony as to what was happening here. I've included just a short segment from one of the letters where it says members of the Kolkhoz had had no flour or bread given to them for 2 or 3 months because they had not carried out their plan of food tax. They live on sour cucumbers, pickled cabbage, and a little potatoes. On such semi-alive men is being built successfully the 5-year plan. So it's exciting to see that there's still additional new evidence being found to allow us to bring it to our students through some primary documents to add more support for our educational process. More resources available on the resource page of the Ukrainian Canadian Congress website. So this is the national website, not the Saskatchewan website. There are a few free documents to download and several videos or books that you can order, 3 of which I have provided screenshots of here. So these are just from 3 resources. I do want to bring your attention to Hunger for Truth, the Rhea Kleiman story. She was a Canadian Jewish lady who was physically handicapped, and she was a journalist who traveled through the USSR and who also tried to raise the alarm about the Holodomor. But ultimately, she too was expelled from the USSR in 1932. So that's these are 3 video sources that are available for purchase. These are not for download or not available for free. Most of what I have showed you prior to this are all available for free. These resources are for purchase. Here I've got 2 resources that are locally developed. The children's book, Bottle of Grain, tells the story of a bottle of grain hidden by the Soroka family as they tried to survive the starvation of the Holodomor. And this book was written by one of our committee members, Rhea Good, and you can see that it is available at bookstores and online. The bookstores that are listed over here, Indigo, McNally Robinson in Saskatoon, as well as online at Amazon and at the Ukrainian stores listed there. On the right-hand side is a second resource that is a teaching unit that was developed by a team from our Saskatchewan committee. It's for grade 3, and it's connected to our Saskatchewan curriculum, and it looks at how a grain of wheat linked 2 worlds, the world of the Ukraine and Canada, and it's available through the Saskatchewan Teachers Federation at present. Our committee and UCC Sask is in the process of finding ways of getting that into your classrooms here in the not too distant future. Now, you recognize Valentina. She has also produced a fairly new comprehensive teaching resource. She's the Director of Education for the Holodomor Research and Education Consortium. And this book is entitled Holodomor in Ukraine, the Genocidal Famine, 1932-33. And so these are learning materials for teachers and students. And it's now available for us, the educators, and the general public. The resource is geared for educators teaching students in primary and secondary schools, and it features standalone teaching materials, lesson plans, and assignments with straightforward and basic information about the famine. Now, something else I didn't mention earlier, but Valentina was also key in developing that lesson that accompanies the mobile classroom. So Valentina is quite well known in Holodomor education circles. I believe it was in 2016 or 2017. There was a conference in Winnipeg, Manitoba that was put on about teaching the Holodomor, about genocide education with a focus on Holodomor. That was a very wealth of resources available there, and a lot that was made available for teachers at that. So this brings an end to my formal part of the presentation. I didn't want to make it too terribly long. I'm going to stop sharing, and if any of you have questions or comments or additional resources that you are aware of that you'd like to bring to our attention, I would love for you to share them with us. Just feel free to unmute yourself and show us your smiling face. Larissa's in her classroom. She's still burning the late afternoon oil in the classroom as I used to do. I'm happy I don't have to do that anymore. But if there are any questions or comments, please take this opportunity here before we end today. I see, I didn't check the chat box. A couple of things. Thank you for an informative and practical webinar. Another person had to leave, that's fine. Is the book Bottle of Grain available in French? I do not believe so. Do you know the answer to that, Larissa? I don't see Ria here today, but she's shaking her head no, meaning you don't know, or it's not available in French. Feel free to unmute yourself there, Larissa.
I don't know, but we could probably get that message out to Ria just to ask.
Sure thing. And Oysen, you've got your hand up. Feel free to chime in.
Just that what happened in Ukraine with the Holodomor, it sounds extremely similar in many factors in like to what occurred here in Ireland in relation to like the Irish potato famine. It was more of a natural event, but unnatural in the sense that there was next to no already no outside help was allowed in to assist the population that was being most affected. And it was really, and even like there was events where like shipments of like corn from America would go across the Atlantic and be immediately turned around by the British authorities, very similar to what the Soviet authorities did in Ukraine. And even before like the Soviets took power, the treatment of Ukraine by the Imperial Russian authorities was very similar to how the English ruling class and British establishment treated the Irish, as essentially they in the video they touched on like almost blaming the victims that are starving, like it's their fault for not engaging with the 5-year plan properly. You saw that worldview in how they saw the Irish as in like almost like deserving of this because they're lazy or drunken or just a general biased victim blaming point of view.
So the British government used the opportunity to manage / control the Irish population to a large extent, and that's something. Thank you for that, Oysen. Any other questions or comments or observations? I don't see any other hands up or a small group. Just feel free to chime in. If not, just as I wrap up, then I will send out a message following in the probably tomorrow that has a link to the recording of this so that you have it for any additional information if there's any of those sites that you want to get to or weren't able to write down, or if you want to share it with any of your colleagues that you think might be interested or didn't get to join us today. I know those that had registered but didn't get to today's session, I know they'll probably want to have a look at this recording as well, so they have access to those same resources. So that concludes what I have for everybody today. I just want to take this opportunity to thank all of you for joining me in the late afternoon and into supper time. I know we have, and beyond, we have one teacher that had joined us from Ontario, and maybe others. I didn't see where everybody was from, and as far away as Northern Ireland. That's fantastic. That's one of the furthest in any of the webinars I've been participating in in the last year and a half. So that's wonderful to have your participation, Lyson. With that, I will say good night to everybody. You have a great evening. And of course, this is the week to commemorate the victims of the Holodomor and to celebrate the survival of families at the same time. Celebrate may not be quite the proper word, but we are so pleased to have people that have survived and can bring us their stories and the truth about what was happened. With that, I will say good night and end our webinar for today. Take care, everybody, and all the best to you as you continue to work in these COVID education times. So good night, all.